Welcome back. This is the third and final session in Socialist Action's springtime educational. So we have a panel with three speakers, but first of all, before we get into that, we're going to have some a cultural event with our very favorite singer, one of our own members, Emily Stairs, who's a soprano and a music teacher. So go for it. We're longing to hear you again, comrade.
Hi again, everybody. Good to see you all again. So, for this afternoon, this is all about, taking to the streets, how do we stay active? And so I thought to kind of complement this session, I'm going to sing Hammer and a Nail by the Indigo Girls, which is all about, it's all well and good to sit around thinking, but you gotta take action, gotta get a hammer and a nail, use your hands.
Hands agrees.
Webs from a hovel, a blistered hand on the handle of a shovel. I've been digging too deep, I always do. I see my face on the surface, I look a lot like Narcissus. A dark abyss of an emptiness standing on the edge of a drowning blue. I look behind my ears for the green. Even my sweat smells clean. Glare off the white hurts my eyes. I've gotta get out of bed and get a hammer and a nail. Learn how to use my hands, not just my head. I'll think myself into jail. Now I know a refuge never grows from a chin in the hand and a thoughtful pose. Gotta tend the earth if you wanna rise. Had a lot of good intentions. Sit around for 50 years, then collect a pension. Started seeing the road to hell and just where it starts. But my life is more than a vision. The sweetest part is acting after making a decision. I started seeing the whole as the sum of its parts. I look behind my ears for the green. Even my sweat smells clean. The glare off the white hurts my eyes. I've gotta get out of bed and get a hammer and a nail. Learn how to use my hands, not just my head. I'll think myself into jail. I know a refuge never grows from a chin in the hand and a thoughtful pose. Gotta tend the earth if you wanna rise. My life is part of the global life. I found myself becoming more and more immobile. When I think a little girl in the world can't do anything. A distant nation, my community. A street person, my responsibility. And if I have a care in the world, I have a gift to bring. I look behind my ears for the green. Even my sweat smells clean. Glare off the white hurts my eyes. I've gotta get out of bed and get a hammer and a nail. Learn how to use my hands, not just my head. I'll think myself into jail. I know a refuge never grows from a chin in the hand and a thoughtful pose. Gotta tend the earth if you wanna rise.
Okay, all right. Okay, folks, the panel is canceled. This is the Emily Stairs concert night.
Some other time.
Okay, thank you so very much, comrade. Thank you. It's beautiful as usual. Okay, so I guess we have to get down to business. The topic of the next session is organizing for radical change in Canada. And our first speaker is Tom Baker, retired veterinarian epidemiologist with over 25 years experience in the public sector in food safety, animal health, and in emergency management. He is considered an expert in dealing with highly contagious poultry diseases, such as the avian influenza. Tom is president of the Hamilton Center NDP District Association and is a leading member of the NDP Socialist Caucus and Socialist Action. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm pretty busy at retirement these days in terms of wage labor. But anyways, I really thank Emily for that song. It was such a beautiful introduction to what I'm going to talk about. We're going to talk about a lot of people that I guess would have hammers and nails and tried to build something new. So thanks for the invitation. I'm going to share some very rich experiences of some militants based in Hamilton Center who were inspired and activated by our sister Sarah Jama. Most people have heard of Sarah Jama, and some of the things I'm going to talk about tonight you may be familiar with, and others I think you'll be interested in learning. In this presentation, I do want to step back and provide some background on Sarah Jama and her leadership development, because I think it's always important when you're looking at a movement to look at the leader and where they came from. They didn't just pop up; they were created by something. And so I want to talk about her leadership development and the political environment in which she arose and thrived. I want to examine the grassroots movement that developed in Hamilton Center, which, if you don't know, is the largest and poorest riding in the province, and look at what helped shape Sarah, and in turn, what was impacted by her. Sarah's calls for justice and human rights reflected the demands of the activists in the streets, the union halls, community, and yes, indeed, the New Democratic Party itself. Those organizing for radical change in this country would be well advised to study the phenomenon of Sarah Jama's movement. Her massive electoral victory and the subsequent isolation and persecution by the backroom bureaucrats of the Ontario NDP, who eventually led to her electoral defeat in the 2025 elections. Sarah cannot be defined simply by her 2-year stint in government. She's much more than that, and she can't be defined just by the suppression that she suffered from the NDP party brass. She's much more than that. I want to speak briefly about Sarah's 5 years of political activity before she began to think about the electoral world. Bear with me for a few minutes because I believe it helps us understand the Jama phenomenon. In 2017, Sarah ran unsuccessfully for president of the McMaster University Students' Union. She was not successful, but she became the first visibly disabled elected student assembly representative. She became president of a group called McMaster Womanists. I hope I'm pronouncing it right, which was a gender-based anti-Black violence healing group. And that's where Matthew Green, who was an older person, a counselor at that time when he first met Jama, he says this young student rolled up to the front of the room and proceeded to sing Lean on Me with her mother. It was Sarah Jama. He says this was someone who was constantly pushing outside of her comfort zone to have her voice heard. It has become a metaphor for the way she's taken on really critical and serious issues. Matthew says that she has a piercing analysis that cuts through the bullshit of politics of power and really exposes some fundamental ugly truths about the experiences of people living in Canada. Green predicted that Jama would go on to be a historical figure. That was in 2017. He hired her in his office when she was finished university. In 2018, Sarah co-founded the Disability Justice Network of Ontario. And here's what she said at the time. I just have a quote here, if you bear with me. I'm a 24-year-old community organizer who works on the intersections of race and disability against all the forces in the universe, mainly capitalism and colonialism, that try to tell me I have no business existing. As a Black woman with a visible disability who grew up in a single-parent household, I faced so many barriers that I internalized. Growing up this way causes a complacency of the soul. You believe there's no issue worth fighting because your existence is the root cause. Unless we learn to take care of the most vulnerable, those who aren't seen as beneficial to the state in terms of cash flow, we will never build a better world. We'll continue to hunt, harm, bomb, and destroy people and lands viewed as the other. We'll continue to engage in modern eugenics, the practice of deciding who deserves to live and who doesn't, through funding decisions by the state. This includes funding childhood disability programs, but not enough adult programs. It includes a lack of accessible, affordable housing and the wrongful imprisonment of people with disabilities. So that was 2018. A couple years later, November 2020, Sarah comes under public attention again. She organized about 100 protesters from the Hamilton Encampment Support Network to pitch tents alongside the homeless people that were squatting in front of City Hall. And their demand was that the police budget be reallocated to affordable housing. And she got a $100,000 ticket for violating pandemic gathering rules. That was 2020, you remember. She ripped it to pieces as her fellow protesters cheered, "We're not going anywhere." The occupation, this is very cold weather that I recall quite vividly in November that year. They occupied that area for 10 days under quite difficult climate conditions until Hamilton's bylaw department handed them out trespass notices and tore down the tents. In response, they took over the mayor's office, where Sarah and others were physically removed by the police. She was arrested and charged with assaulting and obstructing police. Supporters of JAMA and 5 others facing charges related to those protests began a campaign to demand the charges be dropped. So Sarah's been an activist a long time before most people had ever heard of her outside of Hamilton. Roll the clock ahead to 2022 in April. Sarah JAMA won the Woman of Distinction Award for Community Leadership in Hamilton. She was facing several criminal charges at the time. Usually the woman of distinction, tends, well, I shouldn't say usually, but often they come from the business community and so on. And this was quite a change. Sarah, 27-year-old now, is becoming well known by those paying attention to the city's most contentious social issues: homelessness, poverty, Black Lives Matter, defund the police, the environment, rapid transit, disability rights, food insecurity, mental health funding, urban expansion, land back, mask mandates, vaccine clinics, the crisis in long-term care. The list goes on. Sarah was involved in these struggles. She openly criticized what she called the political system that continues to oppress, deflect, and ignore the needs of people. Sarah is a brilliant organizer who listens to people's ideas and works with them to push back and win. She was often the face of the protests. She was often the voice of the campaigns. She was the one quoted by the media, the one racking up the likes and taking the hate on Twitter. The one being arrested. Some wanted to honor her, others wanted to denounce her. Many underestimated her. She says, "The people who are angry at me for not following the system's way are comfortable with the way things are functioning. I make people feel uncomfortable sometimes." Sarah's activism has been described as coherent. She's thinking about the intersection all the time. For example, the legacy of colonialism on racism or ableism. Then she takes it a step farther. She transforms theory into action. She moved the conversation out to the front lines. She was always thinking about how to mobilize, how to bring people together and not leave anyone out. Her supporters included youth, queer folk, climate advocates, ODSP recipients, seniors, local, provincial, and federal politicians, union activists, feminists, and people from across the country. Her message was the same: exercise your political agency and create the world we want to live in. Go ahead a few months till early or late summer 2022, when the leader of the NDP and the member of parliament for Hamilton Centre, Andrea Horwath, stepped down. Sarah began advancing discussions in the community about electoral action to complement street activism and to confront power in government, to create a platform for organizing struggles and engaging the community more broadly. She says, I think there's interest in engaging with these political systems. I wasn't headhunted by the NDP. The community decided that I should be here in this political role to fight Doug Ford on key issues that impact the riding. Sarah decided to seek the NDP's nomination in Hamilton Centre for the 2023 by-election to replace Andrea. She recruited 600 new members to the party. These were activists that she recruited from various communities in struggle: young racialized, diverse students, young workers, LGBTQ, human rights activists, and on and on. It was interesting that many disenchanted long-term NDPers and militants in the labor movement took notice, and they wanted to be part of her campaign as well. Her nomination campaign in early November 22 attracted significant new forces, a lot of funding, and a lot of media attention. Her nomination meeting was unprecedented, and I've been around the NDP for 60 years, and I've never seen anything like this in terms of its breadth and its militancy. NDP members in other ridings and several local union leaders took notice, and they became key allies in her victorious by-election campaign in March 2023. She won an unprecedented 54% of the vote. Her victory party of several hundred people attracted even the party brass, who looked on with trepidation. That was in hindsight when I thought back. Sarah and her followers aspired to bring in a new way of electoral politics through ongoing strong community organizing, focusing on marginalized peoples, year-round door-to-door canvassing, and other novel concepts. Sarah established a large, strong NDP executive in her riding. I was one of the people she, personally invited to request me to be on her new executive. She wanted the key leaders of the various organizations in the city that were involved in the struggle. She invited radical young people and leaders of various struggles to form this team. The task of creating a riding association that would be a beacon to riding associations across the province. As an MPP, Sarah brought her grassroots organizing experience and deep community connections to Queen's Park, providing platforms for disenfranchised individuals who are often dismissed. She's consistently advocated for issues such as public health care, rent control, affordable and supportive housing, childcare. Time doesn't allow me to go through all the areas that she worked on. She's also opposed unnecessary highway expansions, private health care, and policies that fail to prioritize the well-being of the community. Sarah put working people first, and working people are the heart of Hamilton Centre. But it was her involvement with the pro-Palestinian protests that brought her to the attention of the Zionist lobby, which has been actively trying to shut her down for years. On October 10th, 2023, and some of us were at Queen's Park that day, in the visitors gallery. Sarah was the only politician to call for a ceasefire in Gaza, denounce the apartheid state of Israel, and call for the ongoing occupation to end. Shamefully, the NDP caucus leader, Marit Stiles, reacted strongly to Sarah's statement, unilaterally expelled her from the caucus. Concurrently, Doug Ford's government censored Sarah from speaking in the legislature. And Sarah remained censored until the end of that government. After being defamed and censored in the legislature, neither Sarah or her community gave up. We and her supporters formed a movement called Restore the Voice to reach out to the constituents who no longer had a voice in Queen's Park. Raise funds for a legal campaign to reverse the censure. I was helping coordinate that, and we raised $33,000 in a week for her legal defense. Many supporters of Sarah here and across the province tore up their NDP membership cards in protest and withdrew from activity inside the party. There were stories across the province of riding associations that literally evaporated. The executives resigned and they were dead. In order to ensure constituents received services, however, Sarah established an independent constituency association, which is required under Elections Ontario law. Our NDP executive in Hamilton Centre came close to collapsing with these resignations, but a core of us decided that these undemocratic attacks on Sarah and her constituents required a vigorous defense campaign. Together with allies and other ridings who were experiencing resignations, we decided that the leader and her supporters needed to be held accountable for this unjust attack on party democracy and human rights. Through open letters, provincial council resolutions, media events, we succeeded in challenging the party brass and opening a debate at all levels of the party, as well as in the community and the media. Several local labor leaders, central leaders of public sector unions, and MP Matthew Green publicly spoke out in defense of Sarah Jama. We were able to win a vote. 1/3 of the provincial council called for Sarah Jama's reinstatement, several party executive members. So we were having an impact. We were slowly able to convince many former members who had ripped up their cards to come back, renew their membership, and join us in the fight against the party leadership at the coming January convention. That was the one scheduled for January 2025, where resolutions would be going forward, calling for Sarah's reinstatement and for a leadership review. We elected a strong left delegation, which included Sarah herself as one of our delegates, and several progressive resolutions around Palestine, etc. Of course, the January 2025 convention was canceled. Sarah chose to seek an ONDP nomination for Hamilton Centre for the February 2025 snap election. She was a member of the party. She was entitled to do that. Her preference was to run as an NDP rather than as an independent. She was rejected by the bureaucrats' vetting process. Our ONDP executive, as well as most active NDP members in the riding, remained strong defenders of Sarah, and we threw all our energies into Sarah's independent re-election campaign, even though we were members and of the party and were on the executive of the party, in my case, all of the executive. Hamilton Centre did what it always does, elected the NDP candidate. So there's this historical legacy of always voting NDP. That happened again. They got Robin Lennox, the new MPP, got 35% of the votes. Sarah got 15%, just shy of 5,000 votes, despite a massive on-the-ground campaign and ample funding. So the core political base that was around Sarah remains intact, even after this defeat. It's likely to continue to be loud and engaged in left politics in their unions, the NDP, and the community. But after this electoral defeat, you may remember, we were immediately into a federal election campaign. Matthew Green was running for re-election, and virtually all of Sarah's supporters immediately transferred over to become leaders in Matthew Green's campaign, which attracted over 700 volunteers. The campaign felt like round two in the fight. People expressed a healthy contempt for the NDP leadership.
Please wrap up.
But felt Matthew represented the community's interests. Again, despite a mobilization, another unexpected federal defeat was suffered. Matthew pledged to continue the fight to rebuild the party as a working class party that was democratic and accountable, and he plans to seek re-election. I'm going to be shy about him. I need about a minute and a half. Is that possible?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. Understandably, there is widespread disappointment, even demoralization by some. The independent association still exists in theory. It meets regularly and talks about plans and assisting in various struggles. Many of her followers are now focusing their efforts on the Palestinian solidarity movement and on strengthening their unions. This, what they call JAMA time movement, was seen as such a threat by the party bureaucracy. In many ways, similar to the way that Brass had dealt with the Waffle movement in the 60s, the New Politics Initiative in 2001, and the LEAP Manifesto 2015. Those groups burst on the scene during conventions, but they largely failed to orient to the writings of the union activists. So in that way, Sarah Jama's initiative is quite different. But again, the party leadership has demonstrated their unwillingness to adopt or welcome radical change. The party brass and the Zionist lobbyists like CJ were correct to fear Sarah's example. She and her mobilized supporters are a beacon of hope for those in struggle for basic rights and survival. She strived to unite the oppressed on the basis of concrete demands and to challenge a genocidal and exploitive system. She saw no contradiction between fighting for meaningful reforms inside Queen's Park and mobilizing in mass action. Her campaign was a laboratory to test new ways of organizing working people and other oppressed sectors in a struggle for political power. Out of battles such as this, we will see the emergence of a new vanguard of militants, individuals beginning to understand that political parties and structures that support the capitalist system must be replaced by a revolutionary workers' party. The implications of the Sarah Jama campaign will continue to be felt in communities and unions, the NDP, and inside the halls of power for years to come.
Thank you, Tom. Our next speaker is Carl Trolio. He was born in the Philippines 27 years ago. Carl and his father were politically active in many leftist United Front campaigns, but had to emigrate for safety. Carl continues to fight for oppressed communities in Toronto through Acorn Canada as a tenant organizer. He believes that meaningful change arises from grassroots movements. Welcome, Carl.
Hey folks, can everyone hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, let me get my glasses. Here we go. You can hear me? Okay, so folks, comrades, mga kasama, it's our turn for comrades in the Philippines. I'd like to thank everyone for still being here. It's been a long day. And whatever brought you here, be it Barry, an email from Barry, or Socialist Action, or an invite from a friend, I decided to fight back, the want to find a community, or that's who we're at called Hope. Thank you for being here. So I'll start this off by giving you a bit more about myself. I'm an organizer, activist, campaigner, and like some of you here, I'm an immigrant. I came here with my family about 5 years ago, 2 weeks before everything locked down. So for an entire year, the only thing I saw here in Canada was a 407. It's really nice. Yeah, so I'm an organizer. I organize against the Duterte administration back home. Here, I'm a tenant organizer. And as of recently, this may come as a shock to Kiri. I'm no longer organizing with Acorn, but I carry forward everything I learned with them. Regardless, I'll still be talking about organizing and tenant organizing. So let me share some lessons by drawing contrasts between organizing here and back home. So organizing, regardless of, is okay. Is it muffled for anyone else, or is it just with Barry?
No, it's muffled for me too.
Oh shit, I'm sorry. Is this ooh. The input is also the camera. So is this better?
Yes,
Not really.
no, better for me.
It's a lot of ego is happening. I'm able to hear, but it's just a lot of ego and
Oh, now.
can you-
Speak.
Is it better now?
A little bit.
Okay. Do we still have an echo?
It's mostly muffled.
Muffled. Why is it muffled? Just give me a bit, folks.
Sure.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay. Check. Better?
Yeah,
Better for me. I can hear you quite clearly.
that's better.
Okay. So let me share some lessons by drawing contrasts between organizing here and back home. Organizing, regardless of the location or the context, requires being where the people are, both literally and figuratively. Don't let your masses be an imaginary and nebulous concept, whether it's organizing tenants, farmers, factory workers, or even your own coworkers. You have to be where they are. Back home, this traditionally meant having to live in the community you're organizing, live the lives they lead, eat the food they eat, and be a member of their community. For the comrades assigned to organizing marginalized sectors in the provinces or the cities, my organizing was with the youth and urban poor communities. They had to actually live in those communities and integrate themselves within for a minimum of a few months before any of the work begins. And it begins with baby steps. No big actions off the bat, no toppling the government right away. It always starts with mapping. Who are the leaders here? Which ones have the potential to be leaders? Which ones are the gatekeepers? It's organizing 101. And then you start identifying, not by yourself, never by yourself, but with the community, the winnable issues. So this could be a clogged sewage system, the need for streetlights, or a new farm to market road. You do not come into a community and start telling them the things that are fucked up. They already know. They have to be the ones to name and identify their struggles. Our role as organizers, as socialists, is to get them talking about it. It always starts with small issues, small actions, and small wins. I digress. Again, this is Organizing 101. The question, or the challenge for us as socialists, is how do we take these small wins and start tackling bigger and bigger fights? Or as tonight's theme, radical change. So back home, the movement was, and still is, it's everywhere. This take may be due to me growing up in a very activist household, but even objectively, the movement is very visible. When we do protests back home, they were almost always big, numbering in the thousands. A protest with hundreds is considered a small mobilization. The left has an actual, although diminishing, presence in the government and during elections. We have an ongoing armed struggle, and the masses were easier to agitate. But all these things, these are direct results of having issues that are directly in your face. We have a very high poverty rate, people dying of hunger, and people getting killed by a government that brags about it after. All these were part of everyday life. So the discomfort was fucking apparent. Getting people riled up easy. What we had to break was the fear. So coming here in Canada, I saw the reverse. If the discomfort back home was screaming at your face, here it's background noise. Unless you really start listening to it. Getting people to say this is fucked up, it's a bit trickier. So this brings me back to my initial point on being where the people are. The literal sense is, go where the people are, be physically present with them. An email or a digital petition, they both pale in comparison to an in-person conversation. In tenant organizing, An average day consists of knocking on each door, as I've done with Kiri's building, and trying to find people that are pissed enough about something. Could be the rent, the property manager, lack of repairs, people pissed enough to want to do something about it. But these are A doors. These are really, really good doors. These are people that are already riled up and ready to go. More often than not, what we get are B and C doors. These are people that either have no issues with the building or their communities, or are only slightly inconvenienced, but not enough to do anything about it yet. This context is the same with any form of organizing. We are going to come across a lot of people that simply do not care enough. So here is where the figurative sense of being where the people are comes in. They may not care about the housing crisis yet, or the climate collapse, or the genocide in Palestine, but they definitely care about something. So meet them where they're at. If this means them being bothered by the lack of repairs, or the mold under their windows, or their rent going up by $20 a month, then that's where you meet them. We have to remember that these are very real things to them. These are things that they deal with on a daily basis. A leaky faucet is a more pressing problem to them than the rise of the far right. So we organize them to fight for repairs, or pest control treatment of their building, or for cameras in the hallways, or organizing them on anything. The entry point doesn't matter. What matters is that they start believing in their own power and in collective action. So we've had the small wins. We win the faucets, we win the repairs. The faucets are no longer leaking and the light bulbs have been replaced. What's next? When does the revolution come? The answer is not yet. Cadres are not born, they're fucking developed. And a mobilized neighborhood does not equate to a community yet. What comes next is building and educating the community during and after a shared struggle. So how should we build communities? By breaking bread with them. I've eaten with almost every one of my leaders, especially Kiri. Breaking bread with them, sharing drinks, telling stories, and maybe even smoking cigarettes with them if you're a smoker. So cigarettes, organizing tool, really, really good organizing tool. Comrades are not comrades yet, unless you have a relationship with them that's outside the ambit of emancipatory work. Any organization or movement that focuses solely or largely on the issues that it's fighting for or against is fostering an environment that is completely transactional. And this is how you lose people. This is how you lose fights. Having a high turnover rate of people in the movement prevents you from tackling bigger fights. If we want people to stay, we make them stay because they want to stay. The movement is filled with wins, yes, but it's also filled with grief, a lot of grief. If we want to organize for radical change, we have to recognize that any movement lives and dies on the strengths of its collectives. So to summarize the rambling, meet the people where they are and build relationships. It doesn't matter whether it's tenant organizing or union organizing, meet them where they are. One leaky faucet and one cigarette at a time. That's it, folks.
Thank you, Carl.
Sorry about that. I didn't realize he had finished. Okay, so thank you very much. Our next speaker, Helen Smith, despite having a very, very bad cold and a long bout with laryngitis, has agreed to join us tonight. So thank you, Helen. And she has been a member of Socialist Action and the NDP Socialist Caucus since 1993. along with her Vancouver NDP Electoral District Association, and with the help of Socialist Caucus Acorn and Lead Now, she has written and forwarded resolutions on affordable housing for NDP provincial and federal conventions. She is also campaigning for free and accessible transportation. Welcome, Helen.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Tom and Carl, for your presentations, where you emphasize the importance of community organizing and what it's like in reality working on the ground. It's very useful. What have we learned about organizing for radical change in Canada? Firstly, we know that the profit system we live under, capitalism, is unable to meet the most basic of human needs. If there is to be a sustainable future for nature and humanity together, we must transform the system from a private profit system to a socialist one where the most basic necessities of life are shared equitably among the planet's population and where the ecology of the planet is respected by all. Secondly, we have learned that making radical change is hard work, undertaken by mass struggles from the bottom up, and that there are no magical guarantees that socialism will come about or be sustained as a result of our efforts. Radical change has little to do with the romantic stories of revolution often encountered in Stalinist texts or Hollywood movies. There is no sudden revolt by the workers caused by dire conditions giving rise to spontaneous revolutionary leadership. There is no ragtag revolutionary army that wins the day, followed by a golden age of equality. Instead, decades and generations of struggle are waged in the face of many injustices. Links are forged between the vanguard and the working class in the face of state repression and betrayal by false leaders. When workers do seize political power, they are immediately confronted by foreign intervention. This has been true since the rise of the Paris Commune in 1871. The agents of counter-revolution, foreign and domestic, exact a high toll economically and politically. These are known as the birth pangs of socialism. The triumph of socialism is not inevitable, but its victory is indispensable to the survival of humanity. History teaches us that socialism in one country alone is impossible. International solidarity is essential to defend and extend the revolution globally. In Russia, due to the failure of the revolutions in the West, socialist aspirations were crushed by the rise of Stalin, the exile of Trotsky, and the intervention of imperialist countries. Grinding poverty, famines, authoritarian rule, and civil war dashed the efforts of the working class to drive the movement forward. Capitalist restoration, followed by a deep split in the Stalinist bureaucracy, rapidly unfolded in 1989. This underscores the need to learn from history so as not to repeat its darkest chapters. Socialist Action members know the hardships of organizing for change in Canada from experience. Since our formation in 1993, we have been building a disciplined revolutionary socialist party. We have worked within many social movements and in the Socialist Caucus of the NDP without illusions in social democracy. Socialist Action has fought to end war and colonial settler occupation at home and abroad. We have struggled relentlessly for women's rights, against anti-Black racism, and for LGBTQ+ rights. In the recent federal election, politicians and the commercial media narrowed the focus of politics to Trump's tariffs, plus a few affordability issues. Important topics were excluded from the discourse: climate change, income insecurity, the genocide of the Palestinian people, NATO and the inter-capitalist war in Ukraine were all pushed aside. Crucial struggles for workers' rights through the struggle for fair wages, union rights, and concerns about artificial intelligence and unemployment were all sidelined. While Jagmeet Singh finally found the courage to mention the genocide against the Palestinians at the leadership debate, his campaign slogan, "Stand Up for Canada," withered on the vine in terms of the many class issues of the day. The NDP lost 17 seats and was severely marginalized, securing only 7 MPs. Workers in Canada are concerned about jobs, affordable housing, grocery prices, deteriorating healthcare, education, and other pressing issues. Now that the election is over, it is even more likely that these issues will not be matched by actions that will meet workers' expectations. Affordable housing that the government will oversee will be accompanied by $26 billion in subsidies to private developers. The Northern Territories will be militarized and developed. Meanwhile, there is no prospect of price or rent controls. Nonetheless, Socialist Action stands out as one of the main parties on the left that is not abstentionist when it comes to voting. As Lenin observed, elections are a platform for anti-parliamentary education. Socialist Action is one of the main movers behind the Socialist Caucus of the NDP. We have done so without illusions in social democracy. We have weathered the storms of labor strength and weakness in the provincial and federal elections. We have participated without illusions in municipal elections. SA has drafted radical resolutions for Labour and NDP conventions, run leftist candidates when possible, made interventions on the convention floor, held conferences, served on electoral district executives and equity-seeking bodies, staffed literature tables, leafleted, distributed Left Turn magazine, produced Red Review, a monthly magazine, hosted many podcasts, and yes, protested in the streets. And we have done much of this with other folks by employing a united front tactic. For a revolutionary party to survive, it must be part of something bigger than itself. It must engage with the actual workers' movement as it is. For us, this means to engage with workers within the NDP, the unions, and in the social movements. However, as socialists, we aren't reformists. We fight for reforms, fully aware that much more is needed, that working class, political class consciousness needs to be matched by revolutionary practice. If reforms or concessions of any kind succeed, then that's good. These are part of the transitional program. But reforms under capitalism are always vulnerable, as is painfully evident in the USA. If gains or reforms are defeated or reversed, we hold strong, learn from our experiences, and build for another day. We have a long-term perspective for the socialist revolution, however long it may take to achieve it. What tools are available? They include participating in phone banks, email messaging, petitions, protests, picket lines, organized by ourselves or progressive organizations and mass movements of the working class. We develop our own members and allies through educationals, conventions, study groups, film nights, political theory nights, May Day festivals, International Women's Day events, and our monthly publication, Red Review. We have a burgeoning queer fraction and many more formal and informal groupings. Our approach to other activist organizations is collegial, and where possible, we share our skills in a united front format. We are careful not to dissolve our party into a campaign, but rather seek to share petitions, calls for action, public platforms, and other political activities conducive to a healthy common front. It is interesting and informative work that provides plenty of opportunities to explore and to experience personal growth. Not only do we meet the working class where they are in the NDP and the union movement, but we also reach out through our fraction work. For instance, on Palestine, we are in contact with people in the Canadian BDS Coalition, Independent Jewish Voices, Just Peace Advocates, and Labor for Palestine. Those of us working on the affordable housing issue reach people in Acorn and Lead Now, as well as anti-poverty organizations such as the 230 Fight Back in Toronto and the Coalition of Progressive Electors in BC. On the international front, we are close with our sister organizations in the United States and Mexico, along with other socialist parties around the world. SA participates in the struggle against capitalist cutbacks, the boss's attacks on wages, job security, and pensions, and the menace of autocratic power in the form of police surveillance and state repression. This was evident in the application of the Federal Emergencies Act during the right-wing truckers' convoy antics and in the current repression of pro-Palestinian activists. The rulers are united in their aim to roll back relief pensions, wage bonuses, and social expenditures and to silence critics. To oppose this boss's agenda, we advocate a militant unity in action up to and including steps towards a general strike. The Liberal NDP Supply and Confidence Agreement of March 2022 to September 2024 weakened both the workers' movement and the NDP. It gave the Trudeau Liberals a license to hike military spending, to subsidize big oil and gas, and to delay promised reforms. The NDP needs to learn from this aborted alliance. It garnered bitter results in the 2025 federal election. Still, socialists are neither indifferent nor abstentionists towards elections. Where a party organically linked to the unions officially runs candidates for office, socialists usually give a party as such critical support. That is 1% support and 99% criticism, if necessary, aimed at its pro-capitalist policies and its misleaders. Support for any other capitalist party, advocacy of a vote for a lesser evil party, such as for Mark Carney's big banker Liberals, supposedly to stop Poilievre's Conservatives, was totally out of the question. This tactic is akin to crossing a picket line for socialists. On that basis, Socialist Action urged vote NDP, but without illusions. Socialist Action is a strong adherent of the United Front strategy. In that context, we don't conceal our views, but insist on participating openly, honestly, and with clarity in movements of the working class and the oppressed. We strive to recruit to our party the very best activists of these movements without hesitating or apology. Strategically, we strive for a workers' socialist government based on working class self-organization to abolish capitalism. The existential threat to nature posed by the profit system is profound. It is the greatest danger facing humanity today. Alongside the environmental movement and together with Indigenous people who stood at the forefront of this struggle for generations, we need to continue to oppose new pipeline construction and to demand a rapid shift to green energy. This entails public ownership of natural resources and workers' control of this sector, rather than carbon taxes that punishes consumers. The effort to replace the misleaders of our class, those who have given into corporate power and those who betray the masses, will be driven by the critical self-activity of the working class. One form this takes is the creation of class struggle groups or caucuses in every union and workplace. The Workers' Action Movement, which contests the leadership of the Canadian Labour Congress and its affiliates, and the Socialist Caucus inside the New Democratic Party, advance this perspective. We advocate a Labour City Hall and a Labour School Board in every city, since the NDP refuses to run openly at the local level. Socialist Action seeks to build an anti-capitalist electoral coalition with other labor and socialist forces wherever this is possible.
5 minutes left.
Thank you. Modest but real progress is evident in the Vote Socialist Vancouver Coalition and the Municipal Socialist Alliance in Ontario. Social polarization and right-wing populists in Parliament embolden the alt-right. The latest wave of attacks on women's reproductive rights and on trans people demonstrate vicious targeting which must be repudiated. Direct mass action by labor, unionists, leftists, and allies will ensure that the policy of no platform for fascists and racists will prevail. The defense of the Palestinian people means defending freedom of speech and assembly here and abroad by governments which conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. The two-state solution, which has proved to be neither viable nor just, would reduce Palestine to a few disconnected, impoverished Bantustans. Socialist Action continues demand for a ceasefire now, for boycott, divestment, and sanctions against the Zionist state and economy, and for a right to return for all refugees. Socialist Action welcomes new members and supporters into its ranks. In the face of trade wars, rising authoritarianism, genocide, and climate catastrophe, the need has never been greater. Our party unites the most conscious and empathetic members of our class. If you are in agreement with our program, we urge you to join today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ellen.